Here's Brody Brazil.
Well, we're now just 2 weekends away from the NHL hosting their outdoor games at lovely Edgewood in State Line, Nevada, on the shores of Lake Tahoe. I'm really looking forward to the visuals of these games. But now that we're only 10 days away, in fact, less than that, there's a lot of questions popping up. Before I get to all that, I actually do want to give the NHL a ton of credit for their idea with this, for their grind and their effort to actually get this thing to become a reality in the middle of a pandemic, against all odds. There's no question that what they're trying to do is for the viewing audience on television at home. This is completely for the fans. And so in that sense, like I said, the idea, the conception, moving forward with it, I can respect the league for that, and I give them a lot of credit for making this statement. But as I said, now 10 days away, if the next 10 days go like the last 10 days have for the league in terms of health situations and games being postponed and just the state of COVID in hockey right now, it's going to make for a very interesting weekend at the end of February on the state line of California and Nevada. So let me just get into a couple different things here. First, the schedule of events as they are supposed to be played out. On Saturday, February 20th, you're going to have Las Vegas and the Avs going at it. Then the next day, Sunday, February 21st, it's the Boston Bruins and the Philadelphia Flyers coming all the way across the country to go play at Lake Tahoe. I guess these teams are flying into Reno and busing to Tahoe. I mean, there is an airport at Tahoe. That runway, though, probably not suitable, I don't think, for team charters, depending on their individual situations. But that's beyond the fact here. The bigger point right now is that 3 of these 4 teams are still dealing with active COVID issues, ongoing COVID problems that are, at this point, not solved yet. Now, they could be by the time February 20th rolls around, or hopefully days prior to that. But then again, they also might not be completely resolved. For example, let me go through this here. Colorado hasn't played a game since February 2nd. That's 8 days ago as I record this. And their next scheduled game is not even until the 14th against Las Vegas, who, by the way, just returned to action. And after their game last night, their 5-4 win against Anaheim, they had to cancel all of their media availabilities with players to the media because of the fact that Travis Noshek tested positive. He was removed from that game mid-game against the Ducks because he tested positive. Again, this is all after Las Vegas was cleared back into action. And now, another significant setback. And that's just the matchup of one game. In the second game, you've got the Flyers right now, who their last game was February 7th, and they're hoping to have their next scheduled game on the 18th. Hoping. That's the plan. And we have seen a lot of teams shut down their facilities, go through the same routine, isolate, quarantine, make sure everything's right, and then return back to action, some with issues like game action issues, performance issues. We haven't necessarily yet seen a team have a second issue with COVID, but like Las Vegas has just gone through. So again, you don't know that it's over until it's well established over. 3 of your 4 teams right now headed into this matchup, like I said, are dealing with active issues. So it begs the question, well, what would you do if one or more of them couldn't show and couldn't postpone? I'll get into how many games the NHL's had to move already this year. The number is 35. But what if you had to move one of these teams around? So I was doing a little reading, found out that ESPN's Emily Kaplan is reporting this. And I'll just quote it right from the article. NHL Chief Creative Officer Steve Mayer told ESPN via text that he expects all 4 teams scheduled for the Lake Tahoe games, the Flyers, Boston, Colorado, and Las Vegas, will take part in the outdoor games. Okay. That's hoping for the best, and that's the expectation. Sorry, that was my interjection there. But he said that the NHL has teams that are ready to be swapped into the event if one or more of those other teams are unable to participate because of COVID-19. Imagine getting that phone call, by the way, 2 or 3 days in advance. Hey, you guys busy on Saturday? Can you come up to Lake Tahoe and play that game? I mean, for the players, that would be jarring enough, but how about all the equipment staff, people that are scheduling the flight, hotels? It's a situation that would be very fluid, to say the least. And it would be fun, I guess, if your team was healthy and in the right position to do it. And I guess you would have some heads up if you were one of these other teams in the loop right now. It wouldn't just, come as a complete shock, but that would be a lot to square away in a very short period of time. But like I said, the last 10 days for the NHL have not gone great. Multiple teams in the East, in the West, in the Central have been dealing with COVID-19 issues. In fact, the only division that hasn't been set back is the North. All the 7 teams in Canada have yet to really have the same encounters as the ones stateside. 35 games in the league this season have already been postponed. And it's just safe to say that if the next 9 to 10 days replicate the last 9 to 10 days, I honestly don't know how confident I am that these pair of games can actually get pulled off in Lake Tahoe. Again, I want to be clear here. I'm not rooting against this, but I'm trying to be realistic here about where the league has been and where things are potentially going. Now, I also want to point this out too. I give the NHL credit. I want to give some more background into this event because it is unprecedented. The unique venue of Edgewood, like I said, just on the Nevada side of the Lake Tahoe shores on the South Shore, but the NHL has staged 30 outdoor games since their first in the modern times of 2003. But every single one of them, and there have been, games in baseball stadiums too, and football stadiums, but all of those stadiums are stadiums that come with bleachers and press boxes and locker room facilities and a place to park the bus and facilities like just water and food and concessions and bathrooms, electricity. All of that exists at a stadium, baseball or football, let alone what hockey typically uses, which is definitely more. And they could bring the rink there. They have all the facilities to make ice. We know that. But Edgewood, the golf course, just isn't set up like that. Imagine building not only the rink, but hey guys, here's your temporary dressing room. And we have to shield it for all sorts of climate issues. Is it going to be snowing that day? Is it going to be 14 degrees Fahrenheit outside? Who knows what that weekend is going to bring. So I just want to say, as I alluded to before, credit to the NHL for being this ambitious about it, honestly. There's also only one way that these outdoor games could have happened, I think, in a place like Lake Tahoe where, even if there were allowed to be fans, and even if we were in normal times, what would they just be building small bleachers? Would the attendance be like, 3 or 4 or 5,000? I mean, you can't build that much. There's only so much realistic and logistic space. So I do want to say that of all the negative that we've gone through in our last more than year of dealing with the global pandemic, I guess a pair of games like this in a situation like this would have only been presented. This idea may have only ever been executed because of the fact that fans they knew would not be part of the occasion. And this would be the only time that going to Tahoe ever made sense. So think about that for just a second. And I've also had the considerations of, well, why are you doing this at the golf course? Why are you also doing this South Shore? Why are you doing this on the Nevada side? And no, I'm not just saying that from the Sharks versus Golden Knights perspective. When you actually think about the shoreline of Lake Tahoe, there's just not a setting that would put a rink right next to the lake other than the golf course with all this open space. I mean, just think about it. Now, there might be other places you could jam a rink in and make it work, but certainly Edgewood, when you really sit down and think about it, logistically makes the most sense. Also right around the corner from hotels. If in fact these teams are going to be staying the night there, you would think, especially out east, that they would not create a red-eye situation for themselves with the Flyers and Boston. But certainly there are enough amenities, there are enough built-in things with Lake Tahoe to happen, but where you'd put a rink, there's really not another spot. There really is not another spot or another spot of this setting and backdrop, which is clearly what the NHL wants. So look, I want to close out this video by saying so much work went into this. And the end result on television, it could be monumental. It could be very special. I mean, just look at that. Look at that. Like that is really cool. If it actually looks anything like that, and I do think it will, what a great advertisement for Lake Tahoe. Not that it really needs it, especially around these parts, but how cool would that be? But I also want to leave it with this. If the event feels rushed, like rushing teams back into playing after they've just been off, or they weren't fully healthy and ready to come back, if it feels rushed or if it feels forced, I just think that's going to be hard to overlook as I also try and enjoy it. So 2 weekends away. Can't wait to see how all of this shakes out in Lake Tahoe.